Hi there. Well, it's 2.5, nearly 3 years later, and I've had so many requests to do a follow-up video, so I thought I would take advantage of a little bit of time off I have in lockdown to do that, and I hope you find it helpful. Well, for anyone who's wondering what I'm talking about, it means you haven't seen my first YouTube video about tinnitus, which was called Tinnitus, My Positive Story. And I think at today's time there's about 38,000 views on it, which is quite extraordinary. But the reason I'm here is that quite a lot of people have contacted me since then, asking me various questions and asking how I am and asking what else I've done. So I thought the time might have come to give an update that you might find helpful, a little bit more information. So the first thing to let you know is, well, I'm obviously still here, but I do have tinnitus still, so sorry, I know that's going to be disappointing for everyone. And as I speak, it's actually quite loud, again, because I've had my lunch and also because I've got a few other things going on. So the last week or so, it's been louder than normal. And that's also part of what made me think it's maybe time to make a video, because I'm aware that it's louder than normal and I don't like it being louder than normal, but I'm still fine. And this is the thing that it's difficult to maybe get across to everybody. Oh, that's my dog. It's maybe difficult to get across to everybody that that can be the case, because of course most people who contact me are at the very beginning stages of developing tinnitus, which, as I said before, is not nice. So what is it that I am doing and how did I get there that means that I'm still okay even when it's worse, and the fact that I've had it, I suppose, nearly 4 years now? And the answer to that is not about the functional things like getting masking devices and doing the various things that you read about in books in terms of avoiding salt and sugar and all the rest of it. It's actually much more psychological than that. And if I'm honest with you, the psychological things that I've done that I'm about to share with you were done more from the point of view of trying to stop myself not going mad in relation to my daughter's illness than they were about tinnitus. Although I have to say, if I'd had tinnitus on its own without that precursor situation, tinnitus would have been enough to make me go to these resources. So what happened was, I thought I was kind of going to lose my mind a little bit, and so I started to delve into things that were written that might be able to help me. So on a practical level, in tinnitus terms, I got Julian Cowan-Hill's book, which was actually a good starting point for that, and he talks about some kind of mind management approaches that help with tinnitus, and they do. But I'm afraid I had to go a little bit deeper than that, and the things that I learnt that continue to help me to this day, fundamentally, with all sorts of things in life, I wish I'd known years and years and years ago, because they would have helped me in the previous 50 years up to this phase of my life. So I'm going to tell you about 3 or 4 books that I've read, the principles within which help me deal with what for me it looks like tinnitus is going to be forever. I want to say that I know that there are people who have managed to cure their tinnitus. I've met a few of them. I went to a function that Julian ran in London. So I hope you're one of those. Never give up hope. I mean, maybe I will be that way in my life, but my focus here is on how do you cope with it if and when you've got it, when it's live. So the first book that I read was a book by a chap called John Kabat-Zinn, so JONKABAT-ZINN. And John Kabat-Zinn is a medical doctor. This was, I think he must be in his 70s now, so this was maybe 40 years ago. And he was working at a university hospital in America on a program called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. Now, before you go, mindfulness, I thought that too. So forget mindfulness, think stress reduction. And the thing that interested me most about this book when I was pointed towards it was that it's rooted in the fact that he designed a program and ran it for people with chronic health conditions. So people who have things like, if we consider tinnitus to be chronic, but things like cancer and back pain, even people who knew they were going to die, who had terminal illness. And the question that he was addressing when he developed his program and then wrote his book was, is there a kind of a mental way to live with these circumstances that's better and healthier than other mental ways? And what is the implications of having that different mental approach to things? And the answer is absolutely yes. And not only are they better, but they actually have, research shows that they have direct response and impact on how people perceive the pain they're experiencing, psychological or physical, as a result of the chronic conditions. And that's what led me to it. And I have to say, some of the concepts in there were completely transformative. Even the first one, which is the title, Full Catastrophe Living. And what he basically says is it's an important thing to accept that life by definition is a catastrophe. There are these little bits in between where life goes along quite nicely and we fall into the trap of thinking that is life, but actually, and all the other bits are something that's not supposed to happen. But actually, life is the full catastrophe. It is an ongoing saga, if you like. And obviously, in the end, we die, which is pretty much a catastrophe if you've had a half-decent life. So how do you live well within that ongoing catastrophe? How do you let go of thinking when a bad thing comes, oh no, this is my life being bad, as opposed to this is just a chapter in the catastrophe of life? Now, it's a tome, this book. It's very thick. I actually wouldn't recommend it, or for me it didn't work well as a book to read. It was very intense, but I found it phenomenally helpful as an audiobook. So he also has a voice that is very good in relation to, being relaxing, talking in a way that's understandable. And because he is into mindfulness and meditation, which is part of it, but not all of it, his voice is very calming in nature. So I recommend it as an audiobook. It got to the stage where a lot of people ask me, how did I let go of the masking device at night time, which I have now? Actually, his voice became the substitute for the masking device. So if and when, and I don't anymore, but if and when I used to wake up in the middle of the night and get upset about tinnitus, all I had to do was put my earphones in and listen to a little bit of his book, and I would be listening to it and thinking, oh, good point. And then before I knew where I was fast asleep. So for probably a couple of years, I used to have his book on my Audible player, and I would just have it sitting there for night time. I'd go to sleep listening to it, and when I woke up, if I was upset, I would plug it back in and listen to it. Very helpful. Another one that is of a similar ilk, now I don't want to put you all off because this is another one that's maybe even deeper down the same road, is a book by Eckhart Tolle. So that's Eckhart-Tolle. Now, Eckhart Tolle is a kind of a philosopher and a deep thinker about effectively mind management. What he presents is a completely different way of seeing and experiencing yourself in the world and your mind within yourself. Now, I know all that sounds very highfalutin, but actually, if you're not into it, but actually he presents it really understandably, and so much of it just makes sense. So when he talks about how you experience your own mind driving you crazy, then you can really tune in and you start listening to him and believing him. So the book of his that I found most useful was one called, I'll just check what it is called, A New Earth. And he has one prior to that called The Power of Now, which is very famous. But in A New Earth, I again found so many concepts that were so useful for calming my mind, calming all the thoughts about tinnitus and all the what-if thinking around my daughter's health, that again, I got it in an audiobook as well, and I found that his voice, which is very heavily accented, I think it's German, but again, because what he said made so much sense, I found the very experience of listening to him started to become very calming in and of its sense. I also found from that book I made lots of notes of concepts that helped me, and if I was kind of upset, I would just look at these concepts and remind myself and go, yeah, that's right, I don't have to think that way, or I don't have to experience things that way. The interesting thing about Eckhart Tolle and A New Earth is that you can also get it on YouTube as a series with Oprah Winfrey and him, where they talk through one chapter at a time, and they also have members of the public discussing it. So depending on your leanings, it can be, if you're British, you might find it a little bit American in style, but I would recommend that you kind of get past any preconceptions about that and just listen to it. I certainly found it very useful. So that leads me then to probably the most powerful thing that I read that helped, and this came about because I got involved in a research program for people who are impacted by knowing or loving someone with the health condition that my daughter has. And so there were some psychologists doing research at, I think it was Nottingham University, on a kind of a toolkit, a counselling process, but a toolkit, because they thought it might be helpful in particular for these kinds of circumstances where you basically have little control over what's going to happen, either as the person who it's happening to or as someone who loves or is helping out with the person it's happening to. And I was contacted by that programme, and I was asked to read a particular book one chapter at a time. And then at the end of every chapter, I had a half-hour discussion with a psychologist. Now, that was transformative, absolutely transformative. And I've since found out a lot more about this approach, this psychological approach, and find that it is used in many different contexts, and it's very, very accessible. It's very understandable. So the book title that I'm about to give you is the less accessible version, the kind of more if you're a psychological thinker version, which I am, and I loved it. But I'll also give you the name of a more easily accessible, understandable book as well. But what I want to say to you is that in these books, what they're offering is a psychological perspective and toolkit that is just so simple and yet so completely impactful. So even if you're not way that inclined, I would really suggest that you try out one or other of the books and have an open mind about it, I guess I'm saying. So the more psychological version of it that I was asked to read is a book called Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life. And it's about an approach to therapy or psychology called acceptance and commitment therapy, often called ACT for short. And it's written by a chap called Spencer Smith. Now, the thing that I found most impactful about this was in the first chapter. And what it basically said, or I think it was maybe the introduction, it basically said, are you upset and therefore living inside your head? Has your whole existence become inside your head? And if it has, then what we're offering here is something that will help you step out of your head and back into your life, irrespective of whatever events are triggering what's going on in your head. Now, you know, what's not compelling about that? That was completely compelling for me, that it described exactly where I was at, and you know, why wouldn't I want to get involved in this? And what it did was triggered in me the word that I found most difficult about everything in relation to tinnitus and my daughter's health condition, which was acceptance. So acceptance and commitment therapy. Now, I just thought acceptance was the most ridiculous word to use. Why would I ever accept her having this really, in my mind, threatening health condition? And why would I accept tinnitus either? Why would I accept them? Why wouldn't I fight them? And once I got into it and I used the word integrate instead. So I used to say to people, why would I accept her having that illness? Why would I accept tinnitus? I'm going to integrate them. Obviously they are there, so I'm just going to integrate them. I am not going to accept them. And one of the craziest things that I came across in that book was a statement that said, or maybe it was Eckhart Tolle's book actually, one of these books, because they're all quite interlinked when you start reading them all, was that you might it might have been John Kabat-Zinn, anyway, it's best not just to accept what's happened and is happening, because it already is. It's best to work with it as if you'd actually chosen it. Now I'll just let that sink in for a bit. Imagine if you'd actually chosen tinnitus. Dear life, please give me this horrible high-pitched screaming noise in my head all the time. Why would you do that? And what would possibly be the benefit of accepting it to the point that you actually almost choose it? The reason it matters is that once you accept, and then even the more advanced version of accepting as if you'd chosen it, what you do is you stop pointlessly fighting it. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't do everything in your power to get rid of it, or indeed to minimise any negative effects of it. But the thing is, your brain doesn't know when to stop doing that. So if I can use my daughter's health as an example, when she was diagnosed with this condition, I became like a world expert on that condition very quickly. And looking back now, I recognise that what I was doing was trying to solve the problem of that condition that nobody else had solved before me, and more importantly, people who are scientists and medics and researchers hadn't solved before me. My brain is a problem-solving machine, as is yours, and that's a very powerful thing. The problem we've got is they don't know when to give up. they don't know when to stop. So should we work on what is the best treatment for her? What is the best monitoring conditions for her? What's new and coming out? Should we question the medics if we happen to know something else? Absolutely, absolutely. But should we spend every minute of every hour of every day going over and over and over and over the same stuff, looking for some holy grail answer to make it go away? No, because then you're in your mind and not in your life. And once I understood that fundamental difference, that you need to get power over your own mind and start saying to your mind, we've done all the research, it's time to accept that it's here, never giving up, staying on top of it and questioning and all the rest of it, but I don't want it to consume my whole life. Then what you do is you look at the bit outside the treatment and the, dealing with it in events terms, and you start looking at how can I live my life with this thing? And then you start stepping into what the possibilities of your life are as if you had made this thing happen. And of course, strangely, I can't believe I'm saying this, there are some positives. I'm not saying I wouldn't do anything to swap my daughter not to have this health condition, but some positives have come out of it, which I hate saying, but they have, and some of them are quite good. The same with tinnitus. It kind of got me aligned with my health and mental well-being. It kind of gave me a new perspective on life and living. Now again, I would like both of the things to be away, but there is some positive things in it. So given that they're not going away, and there isn't at the moment anything I can do to make them go away, but if it comes, I'll be in there. Given that they're not, well, I might as well live with them as if I'd chosen them, because then I'll get on and find the good things. I hope that makes sense. These are fundamental things that I didn't know about, think about, or believe in before these two events happened to me. So when I'd finished the Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life book and the kind of short therapy process with it, it gives you a lot of tools, a lot of different ways of thinking and approaching things. The end part of that is that you kind of realign with what's important to you in life with these challenges. And you do step out of your mind and back into your life and getting on with what's important to you more often than not. Not all the time, obviously, but more often than not. It helped me break the circle of grief. It helped me break the circle of pointless problem solving. It helped me understand that life is a catastrophe and this is just my particular version of the catastrophe, but that not every minute of every day is a catastrophe, so don't let it be so. I hope that makes sense. So the version of that book, if you're not a deep psychological thinker, that is, I think, just as good, but will be frustrating if you're not a psychological thinker, is called The Happiness Trap. And it's by a chap called Russ Harris. And the happiness trap is really about, that thing about I'll get on and live my life at its best when I get the next better job, when I get a pay rise, when I find a partner, when I can move house, whatever it is. And the principle is the same, that you don't know what's coming, you don't know what whens will and won't come. Like, we all live in this kind of fake belief that we have this much control over our lives, when in fact we have this much control over our lives. We like to think we do a lot of planning, and when things go our way, we go, that's because I had control over it. And it is partially because you had control over it, but it's also a lot of luck and randomness and other factors that just happen to align. So once you get rid of this false belief of the proportion of control you have over your life, then your expectations change and you learn to roll with things a bit better. And then you learn to be happy with what you've got rather than waiting until. God, I hope I'm not putting you off with all this psychological thinking. I admit I'm a psychological thinker generally. So those are the 4 things that I read that made the biggest difference to me. When things are tough, which they are, of course, and COVID has happened, and well, you can see from my hair and the fact that I look older and more drawn, and the fact I'm in a home office. Oh, in fact, you can see what I work at now as well. I'm a leadership consultant. I have my own leadership model, C21L, if anyone's interested. I think I have been able to deal with, for example, the whole COVID situation, which definitely adds stress and affected my tinnitus, and you can't not even imagine how frightened I was for my daughter when it first started. It's helped me cope with all that so much better than I would have coped with it if I had not had tinnitus and my daughter's health thing before, and I hadn't had to find new ways of living my life that accepted those things. And so that's what I mean. Every cloud has a silver lining. So I think that's it. I can't think of anything else to tell you. That's another 20-minute video again. You can, of course, contact me again if it's helpful on the same email address that I gave you before, which is ANNEMACNAB@blueyonder, so the colour blue, YONDER.co.uk, or you can leave a message under this video. Tinnitus will not end your life unless you let it, and whatever you do, don't do anything in the first few months, because it's something that you feel you can't live with, but if you could hear what's going on in my head right now, you'd be really shocked, and you absolutely can live with it. The biggest piece of advice I can give anybody is try to move to the mindset of, what would I be doing if I had been born with this and I didn't know any different, because that's the ultimate in acceptance. Take care, everyone. Hope this helps. Bye.